I was a kid, there was a place. A dark place. They closed it down and let it rot. But the things that lived there,
Hello, Danny.
they come back.
Well, hello everyone. It's spooky season, and as promised, I am going to talk about some of the best adaptations of Stephen King's materials. Some of his best novels that have been turned into either miniseries, TV shows, and or movies. In this case, we're going to talk about what I consider to be the greatest of all of his adaptations. Yes, that is a hill I will die on, and that's Stephen King's long-awaited sequel to The Shining, what some consider to be his best work. Doctor Sleep, that follows the continuing adventures of young Danny Torrance from The Shining, all grown up now in the modern day, running afoul of an occult group called the True Knot, led by Rose the Hat, a group of psychic vampires, if you will, that look for young children who have the shine from the telepathic spectrum, the kids that have those kind of superpower psychic connections, and they feed off of them to give themselves more power and immortality. Danny comes to defend a young girl named Abra Stone, and Abra Stone is one of the most powerful telepaths slash telekinetics that's ever been in the Stephen King universe. And Danny is charged with protecting her. And today I want to talk about why I think this is a great adaptation and possibly the most perfect adaptation of a Stephen King work, or maybe even the most perfect adaptation of any novel that's ever been done. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Yes, it's the Lord of Toxicity, and like I said, I did promise I would do some consider the source adaptation materials of Stephen King's work. We've already talked about Salem's Lot and gotten that one out of the way. I've got a couple more on deck that I want to put out, but I went ahead and front loaded this one, Doctor Sleep, the 2012 novel by Stephen King, which was written as a follow up to The Shining, because my very good friend, the Northern English Bastard, has recently done a Doctor Sleep video of his own. Strangely enough, Northern English Bastard does not care for Doctor Sleep, although he doesn't think it's one of the worst adaptations that's been done of Stephen King's work. He is not a super big fan of it. For the uninitiated, Doctor Sleep is the follow up novel of The Shining, which follows Danny Torrance as he has gone into adulthood. He's now lost his mother, all of his connections that he had to his previous life, and he's sort of running afoul of some of the same demons, both psychic and just the usual kind of everyday demons that a person might have that his father ailed from. He himself has become an alcoholic, a chain smoker, and a violent man. He goes to bars and he gets into dust ups. He occasionally recreationally uses drugs. He's marginally employed, and he finds himself kind of adrift in life, going from place to place and not necessarily getting in good adventures, more getting into the kind of foul ones that someone who is got some serious addictions may find themselves in. Danny has promised himself that he would, in fact, not become a drinker and not become violent like his dad, but like so many things that we have, we sort of follow into the footsteps of our parents, and that is quite unfortunate. At a certain point in time, Danny decides to overtake his demons. He finds himself in the Northeast, somewhere near New Hampshire. This one's actually not set in Maine, unlike a lot of other Stephen King stories. He becomes a handyman for a while, but he actually finds his place working at different hospices. I don't know if that's the correct plural. Hospices, hospicize, whatever. He works at a hospice. He's a nurse at a hospice. But what his real talent is, besides changing bedpans and making sure the patients are fed, is he uses his shine, which has diminished somewhat in his age, and especially after all the drinking and the drugs. But he still has it nonetheless, and he uses his shine to help the elderly patients that are passing away from whatever it is that they're passing away from to transition into the next world. So, found a very good humanitarian use for the shine, which is good. And he does that in conjunction with staying on the AA program and bettering himself by no longer using drugs or alcohol to quiet his mind as he did before. And as I said in the prelim, this group of psychic vampires called the True Knot, which live in different RVs and Winnebagos and led by Rose the Hat, as you'll see here in the trailer, they go from place to place finding young kids that have the shine, and they torture them, murder them, and take away their psychic abilities, which they have called steam. And it looks like exactly how they describe it, as a bit of steam coming out of the mouths of their victims. And they've lived for hundreds or in some cases even thousands of years traveling around like this. And the more that they take, the more powerful they become and the longer they get to live. And now at this stage in present day, they're looking for Abra Stone. Abra Stone is a young girl that has both the psychic shine power, but she also has telekinesis powers. So sort of a mix between the character from Carrie, but a little bit more mentally stable, and Danny at a young age. She's extremely powerful and what they refer to as a whale, and they're hoping to harness some of her abilities and feed off and live off of her for an extended period of time. All the while, Danny forms a connection with Abra, and he decides to do his best to protect her, him and a small group of friends who don't have abilities but are loyal to Danny nonetheless. Some of them in the AA program, some of them not. And Danny goes on the run with the young girl and helps her to defeat Rose the Hat, the leader of the True Knot, and the rest are her acolytes. And they wind up finding themselves in the old mansion, the old hotel slash mansion in Boulder, Colorado, where the events of The Shining took place. So, why I call this a flawless adaptation of all the things that I have talked about and done, some of the Consider the Source episodes, some of the ones that I've used for that material, the books lend themselves to becoming movies and or miniseries. Some of them do not, and disastrous results. I like to talk about the ones that are good. That's what I like to do. I don't believe, as my counterpart Laura in book Why the Book Wins, I don't believe her theory that the book is almost always right. In fact, I think more often than not, the adaptations do a good job. And if you watched any of my episodes, you'll see that I do tend to side with the miniseries, TV show, or movie that the source is based off of. Not always, but more often than not. I think those are the ones worth mentioning. This is definitely one of them, and I think it's one of the greatest adaptations. For the longest time, I thought Shawshank Redemption was the greatest Stephen King adaptation, and it certainly is a classic, and I would never argue with anyone who thinks otherwise. But why this is so good, why Doctor Sleep has done so much better than all the other adaptations, I'd like to get into. And first, let's take a closer look at this trailer.
When I was a kid, there was a place. A dark place. They closed it down and let it rot. But the things that lived there,
Hello, Danny.
they come back.
Not many ride the bus this far north. You running away from something?
I'm running away from myself, I guess.
Hi. You can hear me. You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic. I always called it the Shining. The world is a hungry place. A dangerous place.
These people, they hurt people like us.
These empty devils, they'll eat what shines. And they've noticed that little girl.
Well, hi there.
Get out of my head! Get out!
I haven't felt power like that in so long.
They're coming. Where are we going?
There's a place. You sure you want to do this?
I'm ready.
Yes, you run, dear. And then I will find you. And you will scream for years.
Come and play with us forever and ever.
Yeah, so there it is, Doctor Sleep. So Mike Flanagan did this, and if I didn't already love him for what he did with Midnight Mass, I would definitely say he's got to be one of my favorite directors. He has pulled off a real sort of magic trick of his own by doing this. So for the uninitiated, Doctor Sleep, being the follow-up to The Shining, in and of itself had an extremely difficult uh, time being a sequel to something so popular as The Shining. Now, just the book following the original The Shining, Doctor Sleep would have had an uphill battle. But add into the fact that very famously Stephen King does not like The Shining, the film, the Kubrick film. He doesn't. He tried to do his own thing with a miniseries in I think 1996 or seven. It is a little bit more faithful, but it's definitely not something that I could recommend with any kind of. I'm not even going to bother talking about it. It's pure trash. It's just really not well done. I get what he was going for with it, but whatever. So that being said, having something that has kind of divided both fans of the book and fans of the movie, taking the sequel to it that was written and turning it into an adaptation that can sort of cross all of these bridges and encompass all of the things that were great about the original film, the original book, and the sequel book. I mean, it's nothing short of amazing. Mike Flanagan does not get enough credit. So, Ewan McGregor playing adult version of Danny Torrance, Rebecca Ferguson playing Rose the Hat, the leader of the evil True Knot psychic vampire group, and I'm gonna butcher this name, and I'm so sorry. I didn't have time to look it up, but Kylie Curran, I really hope that's close, playing Aber Stone. They all do a fantastic job. All of the side characters, like Emily Ann Lind, who was in the Babysitter movies, and she plays Snake by Annie, and they even bring in Bruce Greenwood and Carl Lumley in supporting roles. Carl Lumley playing the ghost version of the kindly, shining gentleman, Dick Halloran, who was killed in the movie version but survived in the book version. And so that's kind of what I want to speak on right now. So you have characters that have died in the Kubrick version of the film, like Dick Halloran. So, but he is alive and appears in the book version of both The Shining and Doctor Sleep. So the way that uh, Mike Flanagan was able to overcome this, he uses Danny Shine in order to speak to dead people. So, of course, he can speak to Dick Halloran. And he brings in Dick Halloran and the guy that plays him, Carl Lumley, who you might know from Alias. You might know him from Men of Honor. I don't know what you may or may not have seen him from. I think he does an amazing job playing the revised, rebooted version of Dick Halloran. There's also Henry Thomas, who is a big mainstay with Mike Flanagan work, and I think he does an amazing role as Lloyd the bartender slash Jack Nicholson's character of the Elder Torrance. He plays that version of him in a kind of a dual role that is a vision that Danny slash Ewan McGregor sees later on at the hotel. Also, in the original novel, the hotel is destroyed. So, of course, in the penultimate scene, at the climax of the story, spoiler alert, of Doctor Sleep, they bring their final battle with True Knot to the debris and the remains of the Overlook Hotel. While obviously for the film, he has the Overlook Hotel has survived, so that's another change. There's a lot of other minor changes, but I believe that Mike Flanagan pulls this off seamlessly. So again, I'm going to give you another huge spoiler alert. Leave if you haven't seen the movie or read the books. But Danny survives in the book. However, in the film, he does not, but he's still there at the end. And Abra, of course, because she has such a powerful shine, she can speak to Danny as a ghost. Now, I will tell you, when I first saw the previews for this in 2019, I was a little put off by a couple of the race swap, gender swap characters, things like that, that I saw. But I am very happy to say that I was wrong about all of that. There's a very good reason why, for example, Abra is race swapped, and they explain it very, very well in the film. And she's a wonderful actress. I don't know that I've seen her in anything else. I'm looking at her CV right now, and it's nothing that I recognize, but I think she did a splendid job. Obviously, right after this film, we were hit with the pandemic, and so a lot of things got put on pause. So hopefully, we'll see some more things from her in the future. But I think she does a great job as Abra. I read the book in 2018 prior to seeing the film, which is always, in my opinion, if I'm going to give an all-purpose rule for books versus their adaptation of the source material, I will always say that regardless of how you do it, it's always good whether you like the book more or the film more or the miniseries, whatever. I think it's always best to read the source material first. Um, Now, that will give you sort of an idea in your mind of what you want to see and who you want to see it and how you want to see it. But that's not always a bad thing. And then if they adapt it properly, which they have definitely done in this instance, I think that you'll be pretty happy for it. That being said, there's certain things. Abra's supposed to be a young, pretty blonde, and of course, she's played by a young African American girl. That's okay. She has mixed race parents, and as far as DEI stuff goes, it's not a bad one. I'm okay with it. See, if it's done right, I'm okay with DEI wokeness. It's totally fine. Ewan McGregor does a great job playing adult Danny. In the book, it's alluded to that Danny sort of looks like one of the main characters from Sons of Anarchy, Charlie Hunnam. Of course, they don't call him that. They call him by his character name, Jack Steller. I would have liked to have seen Charlie Hunnam play adult Danny. I think he would have done a great job, but I don't think that in any way Ewan McGregor does a bad job. He really sells both down on his luck, Danny hiding from his own powers and shutting them down with alcohol, and he does a great job as adult mentor Danny, cleaned up and using his talents to help elderly people pass on into the next life and to help and protect Abra. The always reliable Rebecca Ferguson, and I've never seen her in a real villainous role unless you kind of count her Mission Impossible stuff, but where she's sort of it's ambiguous whether she's good or bad or whatever. I've never seen her in a villain role, and I think she does a splendid job here. I really like what she did. If I have any complaints about the film, I think that they do not flesh out the rest of the True Knot very well, and I don't think they show the True Knot over time, over the decades in which they do in the source material in the book. That being said, what they do show is very well done, and if that's my biggest complaint, I don't think that's much of a complaint. As far as showing the psychic abilities and how they do things and why, I think it's done very, very well. Some of the more brutal scenes, like the murder of a young boy I think somewhere in the middle of both the book and the movie it's really horrifying, and it's something that will stay with you. Um, it's done about as well in the adaptation in the movie as it is done in the book, and I'm perfectly happy with it. I mean, I'm not happy with it, but I'm happy with how they portrayed it. The other side characters, I think they do a great job. Like I said, Emily and Lloyd Lind, excuse me, from the babysitter as Snakebite Andy, who has sort of uh, Andy McGee's power from Firestarter. I just now realized that her name and Andy McGee's name are exactly the same. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that till just this very second. So she has the power to push people and or mental domination, I think is the real specific one. I do think Bruce Greenwood playing Dr. John Dalton is kind of underused in this. I would have liked to see him do more, but that's okay. Cliff Curtis is great playing Billy Freeman. He's another race swapped character, but I think he does a very, very good job. I think the movie is a little bit more brutal than the book in a lot of ways, which is very, very interesting considering Stephen King material. But if anybody has ever read The Mist and then watched the film, you'll know that can definitely work to its favor and or its disadvantage, depending on how you look at it. So I guess what I wanted to say is I don't see Abra as a Mary Sue. I don't think she's too overpowered in the film. I felt serious trepidation and fear for her in this because although I'd read the book, the book can be changed when it goes into the adaptation form, whether it be TV, film, or miniseries. So it could easily have been changed. And I think the main thing that I want you to take away from this is how well Mike Flanagan was able to meld the Kubrick Shining with the Stephen King Shining with the Doctor Sleep from Stephen King and this his version of Doctor Sleep in the film form. He was able to really get all of four of those things together, and I think that is just amazing. I don't know that anybody else could have done that besides Mike Flanagan. I would challenge almost anybody to tell me how you could take something that is so well received, like The Shining, both the book and the film, but also so divisive, and take the updated version of the sequel and turn it into a film and kind of make everybody happy. I don't think this film did very well. I think it wasn't as well received as I would think it should be. Now, whether that is because of the pandemic or other reasons, I'm not sure. But I will tell you, it's a very worthy sequel. I would definitely recommend reading the book, but I'll also recommend this movie. I think the adaptation does exceed the book. The book does run a little long. It's not one of those things that is a quick read. It's definitely one of the longer ones, and it goes a little bit too heavy into the AA stuff in the book. If I'm honest, I mean it has several chapters. I've got the audio version and the paper version, and it goes to several chapters of Danny dealing with his alcohol and the AA stuff. And after a little while, that gets a little tedious. They do give it its due in the film, but I would definitely have cut that a little shorter, which is what Mike Flanagan did, and he does it in a very very impressive way. So overall adaptation, all the way 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, all the stars. This, in my opinion, is so far the most perfect adaptation of any book source material I've ever read and or seen. I've been having a ball rereading it again and listening to the audiobook as I've been on a long trip to help out hurricane victims down in North Carolina and Florida. And I had the pleasure to listen to this again and buy a new copy of it from one of the local bookstores down there, and I'm very much enjoying it. And I'll be rewatching this with my girlfriend and letting her make her judgment of what this is. If you have not had an opportunity to read it or watch this, I really hope I haven't spoiled too much for you. But I would say give it a look, and if you have given it a look and maybe you haven't watched it in a while, take another look at it and tell me what you think. Tell me if I've got this wrong. Is there a better adaptation of Stephen King's material? Is there a better adaptation of any source material than Doctor Sleep? Because I don't think there is. I'd be hard pressed. I have a couple small complaints with it, but at the end of the day, um, I find this to be very very enjoyable. And I don't see how they could do anything else with it. I hope they leave it alone after this and someone doesn't get a wild hair up their ass and decide they want to, make something else with a follow up. I don't think they could improve upon it. So hopefully they leave it where it's at. But yeah, that's my take on it. That's the Lord Toxic take. The next one I'll be talking about, Stephen King wise, is in fact going to be Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and then I'll be following it up with Joyland, which does not have an adaptation yet, but it is something that could definitely benefit from an adaptation. So, if you are so inclined, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I will leave in the description of this video the link to Northern English Bastards' review of this film. And although he and I do not agree on this particular point, his video is definitely worth a watch. And let me know if you think I got this right or wrong, or maybe you think that he did. Or if you think there's a better adaptation than this, I'd love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like me to review and talk about that's been adapted from its book form into something else, whether it be TV show, miniseries, or movie, please feel free to tell me. And until next time, remember to consider the source.
Consider the source, it's all the same.